Joining us on the show right now, former Pittsburgh Penguin, Edmonton Oiler, Los Angeles King, San Jose Shark, Marty McSorley. Marty, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And I forgot the Bruins as well.
Yeah, I figured you were going to get tired of naming all the teams.
Yeah.
If Wayne Gretzky can play on 4 different teams, I guess I can play for 6, huh?
Exactly. And I remember even one of my favorite teams growing up, the Baltimore Skipjacks. You played a couple games there as well.
Yeah, no, I had I had a great learning experience down there when a bunch of us young guys in Pittsburgh, they put us down there just to learn and play and have fun. And I still remember fondly of Baltimore. I've gone back in there to Camden Yard and different places to kind of see it, and it was it's great memories, great journey.
Was Gene Ubriaco the head coach then?
Ubi was the head coach, and it was interesting that later on for me to talk to young defensemen, some of the things that Gene taught me were patience in my own zone, not overwork sometimes, and making the simple, easy play sometimes in your own zone to get you out of trouble. Young kids want to do a little bit too much sometimes, and Gene's lessons served me well later on.
Marty, the talk of this week in the NHL, as you probably know, has been fighting in hockey, and it happens every time something happens in a fight. Everyone comes out of the woodwork saying we need to eliminate fighting in hockey. There needs to be stiffer penalties. First of all, your thoughts, Marty, on fighting in hockey and whether or not it's time to take it out of the game or to have stiffer penalties.
Well, I think if you look back at the era that when I was playing, that the fighting in hockey really did keep players healthy. Because there's times in tie hockey games or whatever, I'd go by the other team's bench and just say, "Listen, guys, that's enough. Quit taking liberties with our best players." And we all know coaches will go into a locker room before a game and circle 3 or 4 players and say, "Be really hard on these guys." Mm-hmm. So your best players are going to get bumped game in and game out and get bumped hard. And I don't think they can take that every game. You can't expect a guy to play 100 games and every shift he's out there to get hit and get hit hard. We were a deterrent for that to happen. I'm not sure if that can happen in today's game. The role of the tough guy is really, really difficult now in the NHL, and the suspensions are so heavy, and with the instigator rule, the 3rd and the 4th line guys really do take liberties and feel that they can finish your Sidney Crosbys and your Jonathan Toews and run them over and not feel like there's anything can happen to them. And I have Dustin Brown here in Los Angeles. I see him continuously will go and may take an extra stride at a lot of the team's best players. And I don't know if you can protect those players anymore, and I really think you're seeing more of those star players getting hurt that we didn't see in generations past. And I think taking the fighting out of it, or the effectiveness of the fighting, has had an effect. Some people are going to argue that here and there, but it has had an effect. And when you look at fighting today, it's a really, really difficult job to do for the players when they come off the bench put into positions.
I'm sure you saw the fight earlier this week, Tuesday, the George Parros fight, Marty?
Yeah, I know George very, very well, and I watched it very closely.
I mean, stuff like this has happened before, so it's not uncommon. But I mean, I don't think that should be the reason why we should take it out of the game. I'm sure when you ask George when he's willing to talk again, he'll even say that it shouldn't be taken out of the game, that he enjoys it, and he just lost his footing.
Well, what happened there was, I don't think either player is to blame at all, and I think that Colton Orr probably felt as bad as anybody that's with what happened in that scenario. With George falling, yes, it was in a fight, but I mean, a slap shot from the blue line can hit a guy in front of the net, or different things. When you see things happening over the course of the game, and that was just kind of a freaky thing that happened. It wasn't a punch; it was just kind of Colton Orr going down and having George hold of George's jersey, and George lost his footing, fell over Colton Orr and hit his face on the ice. And I've seen people make contact with the ice like that several different times before. Mm-hmm. None of them in a fight. I've seen that happen several times with other types of plays, and it's easy to stand up and say, well, now we have to eliminate fighting, I don't think we eliminate fighting because of that, because of what we saw there. I think that if the discussion about fighting is going to be had, it's the relevancy of it's in the game, and is it working to keep the star players healthy, and that's the discussion to be had. I don't think you look at a freak scenario like this, and I absolutely agree. George Parros will be the first guy to stand up and say, listen, I lost my footing, I hit my face on the ice, and so be it. Let's get back and play.
I think Ian LaPerriere is listening to our conversation because he just tweeted me, can't win the debate one way or the other. Make a call and stop talking about it. Leave the game alone.
Well, the only issue I have is that I'm not sure sometimes with the people that are making those decisions.
Yeah.
I think that the trapezoid, most people think that the trapezoid, as soon as they put it in, I said, okay, your defensemen are going to get hurt. And a lot of defensemen got hurt, and a lot more than there was in fighting. And putting the trapezoid in was a big reason why, but it was never discussed about taking it out. Well, goaltenders protected your defensemen in foot races. They did it all the time. They did it for years. They'd come out, they'd get a hold of the puck, and you'd just peel off, and there'd be no pressure into the end boards at all. But that was never discussed. So, I think they have to be really careful sometimes about putting in a rule. And sometimes I think rules are put in to appease certain people or to give the idea that this is what they're looking to do, especially when they're talking about violence or an aggressive play within the game of hockey. So I think you have to be very careful about saying, okay, let's put the rule in. I think it has to be thought through very clearly. I'm sure that if Sidney Crosby, if you asked him honestly, away from the media, away from everybody, would want fighting to stay in the game. And I think Jonathan Toews, and I think your other stars would say the same thing.
Well, it protects him. You don't have to worry about, people taking a run at him. So obviously it would be important to him. I agree with you 100%. And speaking of rules and not really thinking them through, that Jersey Tuck rule is awful.
Well, I think that part of that too, though, is that they're selling jerseys, they're selling uniforms. I think they want it to be clean lines. I think they want the players to look professional. And when you got players that tuck both sides of the jerseys into their pants, I don't necessarily think that looks great either. I do think that there is the job of the player to look like a good professional, to go on the ice and carry himself well. So I don't have a problem with that rule. I really don't. Gretz may have. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. I think it's a matter of professionalism.
And a lot of people tuck their jersey just because of Gretz used to. Everyone wanted to do it when they played junior hockey or bantam, midget, whatever. I still do it too because that's what he used to do.
Do you play like Gretz?
No, I'm really bad, Marty. It's actually kind of funny watching me on the ice. So.
But no, when you talk about the rules and things, and talk about fighting, and I really, and I'd like to I wish they would play the tough guys more. It's gotten so that a lot of teams really don't play their tough guys. And if you have a tough guy in your lineup and you play him, and he has to have X amount of minutes or whatever. If they played them, I think that there would be a lot more relevant. It'd be a lot more relevant in the game. But if you put a guy on the end of the bench and don't play him, as some coaches will, it's really not fair to the tough guy, and it's really, really difficult to try to do that job. And then you get put on the ice once a period, and you're put out into a role. And then if something happens, then everybody's willing to say, well, the player did this. But just play him. Make sure that teach these guys how to play, give them regular ice time, make them part of the hockey team, and I think that there'd be less fighting and it'd be more relevant fighting.
Well, here in Toronto, Marty, when they play Colton Orr, he's even had some pretty nice goals too.
Well, and he gets a lot of space.
Yeah.
And Colton Orr is smart enough too that he's going to get on the ice and he's going to be defensively accountable. And as a coach, if you can teach a big guy to go out and even just to cruise around, let people know that he's in the game, he's on the ice. If he's defensively accountable, then you can give him minutes. You can put him on the ice, and I'd like to see those guys worked with, taught, developed right from the time that they come into the league. And I think that you'd have some real valuable assets come playoff time with a lot of these guys.
Marty McSorley joining us on the show, former NHL player. Marty, we saw also this week a couple of general managers, Ray Shero, Steve Yzerman, Jim Rutherford, even Scotty Bowman coming out saying there needs to be stiffer penalties for fighting. And I think there's a loophole here, Marty. I mean, how many times will we, if this ends up happening, how many times will we see, a player go on the ice, Raffi Torres, and get Joe Thornton to fight 2 minutes into the game? Then you take out one of San Jose's best players off the ice the whole game. And, obviously the coaching staff would be thrilled that Raffi Torres did that.
Well, the other side of that is if there was no instigator rule, after the first or second player, the Raffi Torres that got hurt, Raffi Torres is going to be confronted. And he's going to have to answer the bell, and he's going to have to answer it in a big way.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a decision to make as to whether he wants to do that the rest of his career. So those decisions would be made. And if he goes out and challenges Joe Thornton, in the old days, if he went out and challenged the best player, he's also then going to be challenged himself later on in the game. So it's going to dissuade him from going out there looking for Joe Thornton. That's based upon the old rules. When they say that there should be stiffer penalties, the guys that are asking for stiffer penalties never were fighters. They were never put in that position. I can tell you what they'll do is they'll dress a tough guy. If he gets a stiffer penalty, they'll bring a guy up from the minors, put him in that situation until the suspension's done. Simple as that. And the guy loses money, but he's put out on the ice to do that job. He's put out in that position. If they played these guys, put them on the ice, let them play, then I think you see a lot of the cheap stuff leaving the game from the third and the fourth line guys trying to intimidate or run over the first line players. And I think it's for most every tough guy. Stevie Yzerman never had a problem with tough guys. They never went and bothered Stevie Yzerman because Stevie Yzerman was a class player. Stevie Yzerman isn't going to whack guys. He isn't going to do things. But your third and fourth line guys that go out to look to maybe intimidate somebody or get a whack in on the best player, those guys have got a problem with the tough guys because the tough guys are going to come and see them. They're going to pay them a visit. And that's the way it was done. And, Stevie Yzerman was the benefit of Bob Probert for a lot of years. I think that if he dialed his clock back 20 years, he might want to rethink that one.